rail flips to rail are one of the most impressive looking freestyle tricks, but they're not as hard as you might think. I know it kind of looks like you're just flipping the board randomly and hoping it works out, but with some practice you can actually get these completely consistent, and they work out pretty well. Now there are 4 different things you can do to work with this trick. I can't teach you exactly how to do it because it works a lot differently for different people. For me, it works differently from week to week. So you try these 4 different things and you experiment with them until you find the right balance. And it'll actually apply to more than just a standard, varial 1.5 flip to rail. You can also do it with 2.5, 2 flips, just all kinds of stuff like that. If you learn how to experiment with it and you learn the feel and the technique of it, you can apply it to all different kinds of things. So the first thing you can do is to move your foot from your standard spot. My normal rail flip foot position is here, but if I want to flip it less, the standard varial 1.5 flip is a quarter less than your normal rail flip you can actually land on. So you want to move your foot in some, and that way you can do the same motion, but you're not getting the same pop. It's kind of like if you were trying to do a really low shove it or something. Instead of putting your foot here, you could set it like here, and the board would just move a lot slower. And that's the same idea here. The main problem with this one is that if you flip it slower, it'll also spin slower. So you might need to use your front foot as well to kind of push it around to get the right spin to flip ratio. The second thing is the force you use. For me, the difference between landing a rail flip to grip or to rail is a lot different. It's only a quarter of a flip, but we're talking about doing this and really snapping the tail down to just sort of, tipping the board over. There's a huge difference in how it works. I don't usually do where it flips less. I normally flip it more because it feels more natural. This way, you just sort of tip the board over. It might kind of bounce off the ground and just eventually get there. And it works fine. I don't usually like that way, but that's one thing to try, is to just kind of don't flip as hard, just sort of toss it over and pull around with this foot. The third thing is to change how you jump, and that way you can flip the board the same way that you do normally, but instead of doing this, jumping and sort of floating down, you want to keep your feet close to the board. You want to kind of hover, instead of jump. You just kind of hop, the board starts to come around and you stomp down. And that works a lot with things that flip too much. With the standard 1.5 flip, it might work for you. It didn't really work for me, but if I'm trying to flip it too much, I flip a lot too much. Instead of doing an extra quarter, I'll flip it hard enough that it'll do an extra 3/4. And when it starts to come around, I stomp down with my feet. And I've filmed some before. I'm not sure if I can find them anymore, but I filmed some before where I've actually caught the board in rail in the air and landed it. So that technique definitely works with some tricks. That might work for you with the standard one too. It didn't work for me, but that's just something to play around with. You might be able to flip it the same way as always, same foot position, same force, but just kind of hop instead of jump and stomp your feet down, catch it early. The fourth thing you can do is to try to learn this trick switch. And I've seen this work with a lot of different people, and there are a couple of reasons to try to do them switch instead of normal. And the thing is, if you do this trick all the time, you might find that you can't land normal rail flips. You're so used to just sort of barely tipping it over that you can't even do the normal one consistently anymore. So what some people do is they keep these the same, but they learn how to land to rail switch. And that way, if you want to do flip to rail, you do it switch. If you want to just land one normal, you do it regular. And the thing about that is most people are worse popping with their off foot or with their front foot. So if you're trying to do a flip where you don't flip it as much, you know, the board flips less and you land to rail, it might just come a lot easier with your off foot because you can't flip it as much. So those are the 4 things you can do. Change your foot position, change the actual technique of the flip where you sort of tip it over and push it, stay low, or try and switch. And those are all things to play around with. For me, I've used them all in different ways with different kinds of flips. You know, there's the standard flip, you know, varial 1.5, there's varial 2, varial 2.5. I've done a varial triple actually, but that was just a fluke. But I've used all these techniques learning those tricks. So you know, you can try to change and you can see when I do mine over there. I move my foot in and I flip it less, and that helps for the first trick. You know, the second one, I flip it normally but stay low. You know, you might flip it less and jump low. You might, you know, you just got to mix and match and figure out which works for you. So this takes some time, takes some experimentation. Gotta, you know, just keep working on them, and you should be able to get them pretty soon. They're not that huge of a problem. So practice, experiment. Good luck.